Shall we begin?
So everyone, please be seated. So first of all, in the closed meeting, I feel very sorry that we could not give all the opportunities to all the countries that wanted to make a comments. So for Chile and Canada, we are going to listen to the comments from these two countries. Chile first.
Thank you, President. First, I want to thank ITF for the opportunity of participating, and I want to recognize the permanent support that we receive from the technical team. I also want to commit the best of our effort to contribute to the expansion of ITF in Latin America. And also we have been speaking with the Spanish delegation regarding Spanish translation. So are two areas where we would like very much to advance. In the second place, I want to make the formal invitation to all ministers represented here to our event, COP25, to be held in Santiago de Chile from the 2nd of December. And on the 2nd and 3rd, we are preparing, and this is the invitation, to participate in a specific meeting of transport ministers. This is relevant. We know that COP will approach different aspects of climate change and environmental improvement. However, every time we approach those issues, what we find is that transport is probably the one that can make the direct changes quicker. So it's very important to have a common strategy and to advance in the transport sector. For that purpose, you will find in your seat a letter addressed to each minister with the details and, as I said, the formal invitation. We will keep in touch, and for those ministers that are part of ITF but are not represented here, the letters will be sent through ITF directly. Thank you very much, and we hope to receive all of you in Santiago by the end of this year. It's a very good time, nice weather, and as you may know, excellent wine. Thank you.
곧 헤세 칠레 장관님.
Actually, the HOD for Canada is not in the room right at the moment. If we could have a few minutes, that would be very helpful.
Okay, let's wait for a minute.
Well, I mean, you can go on to the next thing and come back.
얼마나 걸리나?
대표가 잠깐 올 때까지.
그러면
Okay, then we are going to start the official ministerial meeting, and then we will listen to the comments from the Canadian representatives. The ministers of ITF member countries, representatives, and all the distinguished guests, I would like to give my deepest appreciation to all of you for your participation. My name is Kim Jung-ryul, Vice Minister of Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport. The theme of this discussion is global connectivity for regional integration. And I'm very pleased to be here together with leading panelists, globally renowned academia, and policy leaders around the world. Based on your expertise, knowledge, and experience, we can explore the better way to think about the future and present of transportation sector. Connectivity and integration have become the biggest hot word of today. Connectivity between railroad and road and transfer between different transportation modes have become very important, but at the same time, integration between transport and communication and energy are taking place on a real-time basis. We can no longer imagine transportation without communication. And with the growth of alternative energy, cars only relying on combustion engine are losing its presence. Transport has needed to be considered together with energy issues. Such sectoral integration has brought dramatic changes on development plans. Unlike the past, from the planning stage, we need to cover all the different sectors and we need to take integrated approach so that we can maximize connectivity. In this regard, I'm very pleased that all the ministers today adopt the Ministerial Declaration focusing on transport connectivity for regional integration. So, on behalf of transportation sector, we are here to enhance connectivity on transport infrastructure, pursue sustainable transport growth, and also promote cooperation on transportation sector between countries. So today's declaration is expected to be the guideline for all the member countries, and I expect that we can have further opportunities to review and discuss the current status and performance of each country. So I sincerely wish that today's discussion can be the place to share your experience and know-how together. Thank you very much.
Is the Canadian representative with us? Okay, so for the moment, let's move on to the discussions. Mr. Axel Trelfall from Reuters will be giving his comments.
Very much to the ministers we've already heard from and to the Vice Minister. And please let me add my own warm welcome to everyone here, ministers, delegates and guests. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to facilitate an exchange that is aimed at promoting better global connectivity, a trend that is clearly reshaping the world far beyond the transport sector in which most of you here operate. In the interests of time, I won't add anything on the context, but I will say this. Today, we ask a question that has become an all too familiar refrain. How can policymakers and business work together, in this case, for better connectivity? I will be your moderator, your MC, if you like, over the next hour or so, during which we will explore some of the themes of better global connectivity as highlighted just now, focusing in particular on enhancing the potential links between the three aforementioned sectors: transport, energy, and telecommunications. Just very quickly, let me run you through how this is going to work. We're going to start with statements from leaders representing two sectors, energy and telecoms, who I'll introduce shortly. After each statement, there will be a small window for follow-up questions from ministers, mainly for the purposes of clarification, but any questions they may have for our speakers. We're then going to have an additional half an hour or so for open discussion following both those presentations. That will include planned interventions as well. If you have a question or indeed an intervention, please do, as always, raise your flag and I will get to you. The schedule is tight, so I ask that you keep your contributions brief, ideally planned interventions to 3 minutes, spontaneous comments to 2 minutes. Right, let's get started. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our first guest speaker, Rachel Kite is CEO at Sustainable Energy for All, Special Representative of the UN Secretary-General for Sustainable Energy for All, and co-chair of UN Energy. Ms. Kite, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Axel. Chairman, honourable ministers, it's a great pleasure and a privilege to be here today. I'm going to try to do two things in 7 minutes. One is give some grist to your mill for this conversation, a very important one, but also convey an invitation from the Secretary-General for you collectively and individually to step up to this particular moment in time and the challenge that we face as an international community to move forward sustainably. The energy systems upon which transport systems depend and vice versa will be completely different in the future than anything that you or I grew up with. We will have decentralized, digitalized, decarbonized energy systems. What we're seeing is, in effect, the democratization of energy, which is both profoundly exciting and at the same time hugely disruptive. The challenge for you as ministers of transport, some of you, I think Albania in particular, transport and energy, that's a very big brief, have an opportunity to really build systems which serve everyone and systems which will allow us to live sustainably on this planet. At this particular moment in time, we're almost 5 years into the Sustainable Development Goals. We're almost 5 years after the Paris Climate Agreement. And in the tracking that we do on the energy goals, we're not yet where we need to be. And we know that we are falling behind the pace and the scale of progress that we need in order to deeply decarbonize our economies by 2050 and to achieve the goals by 2030. Now, of course, transport isn't a goal, and transport has been left out and left behind far too often in these international agreements, but that is not, I think, any longer an excuse or a reason to not lead. And what you see is from the children striking on the streets of Europe, North America, and about 54, 57 countries around the world now, what you see from their call for us to move from a sense of urgency to a sense of emergency, what you see from business leaders making extraordinary pledges to end the internal combustion engine or to fly in electric planes or to power ourselves around inland waterways on electric ships. We see a business community asking for that predictability and that long-range certainty that will come from the long-range plans that you and your colleagues around cabinet tables must put in place. The challenge for you is to find a way to decarbonize our energy systems in the context of transport, but to do it in a way that is inclusive, which means that people on low incomes, people in the cities that are being built today and tomorrow, have the opportunity to contribute to the economy, can afford transportation, can afford energy, and can do it without clogging up the air that they breathe with the downside of the energy and transport systems up to this point. An enormous challenge, one that is possible to do. And as the Secretary-General says, we have the streets mobilized. We have young people who see the future in an excited way. We see business coming forward with the innovation that we need. We see the impact of the long-range public investment in innovation being played out then through the public sector and the private sector. But we do have what he would characterize as somewhat insipid political leadership. His request to me is to ask you to change that. 20% of global energy use, 23% of CO2 emissions, all under your control. The growth in passenger traffic, meaning that between when Paris was signed and 2030, when the goals should be achieved, there will be a 50% increase in that traffic. Between when just after Paris was signed and then just after the goals are supposed to be achieved, the IATA can talk about the fact that we will have 7.8 billion air passengers. So your contribution is going to become crippling unless we can bend the curve together. What I want to therefore ask you in the 2 minutes I've got remaining is to focus on some of the areas where the Secretary-General believes that leadership needs to be focused in an imminent way. He has called all heads of state and government to a summit on climate at the General Assembly this year. What he's hoping for is that they will take back this agenda and own it at their level. And what we'd like you to do is to return from here and find ways to help them come with a raised ambition in September. And what does this really mean? It means how can we exploit this incredible moment when the price of modern renewable technology has dropped more than 80%, sometimes 90% in different markets, where the price of storage has also dropped, where we have a theory of change where we can clean electricity and then electrify everything. Can we exploit this moment for green hydrogen, for the benefit of ground transportation, heavy haulage, etc.? Can we exploit that for shipping, maybe even for aviation coming soon? Some of the ideas that are being kicked around in this summit, which will require your concerted effort and leadership, are huge efforts to procure cleanly. Trucks, buses, light goods vehicles, heavy goods vehicles, and the market for them in the developing world. Can this group of ministers take it under your belt and make it possible for the urbanization in the developing world to be clean? Can those who export finance and export projects into these countries do so in such a way? Can you take care of your development cooperation so you are only investing in green vehicular transportation? Shipping. Can those of you who build most of the ships for the future build them differently? Can those of you who also sit at the table of the IMO vote differently and take more ambition there? Can we have a new De Bruym declaration and have it soon? Can those of you who have the ports, which are the fueling stations for global trade, start switching in cleaner fuels more quickly? And for those of you in countries where most of the goods are shipped from and to, insist that they are being shipped on cleaner fueled vessels. In aviation, can airports under your jurisdictions begin to switch out fuels more quickly? Can the airlines under your jurisdictions make a more aggressive stance towards their use of carbon? The Secretary-General has called for an end to fossil fuel subsidies. He would like you to, together with your colleagues, to make sure it happens soon, and that means in the transportation sector as well. He wants us to put more tax on pollution and less on people to spur the economic growth to make sure that that sustainable growth is inclusive for all. He has made these comments quite clearly in the last few weeks. My message to you is in this integration of transport and energy, it has to be decarbonised and it has to be inclusive. Those are not mutually exclusive goals. There is so much innovation in the private sector and so many of you are already doing very, very advanced things. The question is, how can we go to speed and scale in your own economies, and how can you be part of that story of speed and scale in the developing world too? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I must say that was a bold and loud call to action to the people in this room, if ever I heard one. Can I, at this point, ask the ministers here if there is anything that needs clarification from what Rachel has just spoken about, or indeed any questions you have for Rachel Kite? Anyone at all around the table here? All right, well, let me jump in very quickly then, Rachel, with my own, if I could. I talk about a bold and a loud call to action. Clearly, there is an urgent need here. How optimistic? We talk about coordination between government and between business, but how optimistic do you feel about coordination within governments, between ministries, let alone on the international level between policymakers?
Thank you. Well, I think if we follow the principle of positive deviance, we all know that when coordination works, whether between local government and national government, between ministries and national government, or between governments in a regional context, or then when we're working international, we can go very, very fast. And there are extraordinary examples of that. And so the question is capturing that more consistently and being more coherent about that. And I think that at the international level, there's been an enormous focus on how to decarbonize energy systems. That, of course, is the golden thread for the economic transformation that is underway. And what has had too little focus is the way that that needs to be harnessed with how we imagine transport systems in the future and how we imagine urban planning and urban systems. Technology, the digitalization, I'm sure Enrique will talk much more about that, makes it possible for us to do the things that we've politically agreed to do. So there is room for a much more coherent and consistent relationship between transport and energy. It happens well in some places. We all know that it doesn't happen well in others. And so I'm not here to sort of point fingers, but I do think that just because there may not be a transport focus doesn't mean that transport can't actually be at the forefront. And I have to tell you, in the planning of the summit in September, there is an industry track and there is an energy track. Most of what we are talking about in terms of the areas where there is the room for the greatest sort of burst forward all include the transport sector. It's shipping, it's aviation, it's heavy goods vehicles, it's trucks and buses in developing countries and the cities of developing countries. These are where the breakthroughs are needed. These are where the breakthroughs are possible, but it's going to require us all to work together to do that. I'm delighted that the government of Chile has invited you all to the COP in December. This is the first COP which is about implementation. Between Paris and now, what the international system has been doing has been putting the rule book in place. But in Chile, we have an opportunity to talk about how to get this done and how to get this done more quickly.
All right, Rachel, thank you very much indeed. Let me introduce our second guest speaker now. Enrique Medina Malo is Chief Policy Officer at Telefónica. Enrique, the floor is yours.
Mr. President, members of the ministerial session, it's an absolute honor and a privilege for Telefónica to be here today. We are a telecommunications company getting into the digital transformation. The reason why we are here today is just to show you some examples of how regulation can be an absolute driver of promoting the deployment of information highways of the telecommunications networks. We are a company that operates both in Europe and Latin America. We serve around 360 million customers, both sides of the Atlantics. Some of the countries members of the OECD and this International Transport Forum, some of them not. But there are some examples of how we operate in the different countries that we work in. Let me start by talking about the Spanish case for fiber optic. Spain has increased from being a number 14 country in the OECD to number 1 in Europe in terms of fiber connections to the home in our country. Why was this done? This absolute incredible achievement is based mainly on a regulatory decision, actually a deregulatory decision by our regulator several years ago. At some point, they decided that it was good, in order to promote both competition and investment, to deregulate any connection beyond 30 megabytes. That had two consequences. Telefónica, as the incumbent and regulated company, decided it was a very good opportunity to start deploying our own fiber network, brand new, and the others decided that they had already been leveraging their business cases on Telefónica's network, but it was time to compete in the same terms with us. As a result of that, we have now a penetration of 75%, around 75% of fiber to the home connections in Spain, which is unprecedented in the European Union. As you can see in the slide, we have more fiber to the home connections than Germany, the UK, France, and Italy together. Let me talk also, in a second example, about what we are doing in Peru. It's not all about super fast internet or digital connections. It's also about connecting the unconnected. We have around 25% of people unconnected in Latin America, and companies like Telefónica and the rest of our competitors feel the responsibility that we have to do something about it. We have started to innovate in our business cases. In Peru, where we are a dominant player, we have decided to partner with Facebook because they have great information and great data about where connections and where internet is more needed in remote and unconnected areas. But also we've had the help of multilateral institutions like the International Bank, the Inter-American Bank for Development, or the Corporate Andean Finance Corporation. What we are doing also here, it's creating a new kind of operator. It's what we call a rural mobile operator. That operator also, because the regulation is so favorable, can work with the spectrum of another company. It's an open network to which other mobile operators will have access to. And our main task now, we've already connected 1 million people since we have started, and we are aiming to, trying to achieve another 6 million. And if this works in terms of business, because we want a sustainable business, not a subsidized business in this initiative, we will start this initiative also in other countries in Latin America. Please bear in mind that this has forced us to also put a lot of innovation in the way we deploy our networks. The model of network deployment that has been established for many years with the traditional vendors doesn't work for remote areas. The business case just doesn't show. But innovating and looking for open source and new providers, and also the help and the contribution of the local communities in which we are working. So that, for example, they take responsibility in the maintenance of the work in exchange for the distribution of our products and services, recharge of the SIM cards and things like that. It's working very well, and it's a model that we really want to export to other countries in Latin America. And finally, let's talk about what is coming and how important this is for those of you transport ministers who are working in the upcoming technology, which is 5G. 5G will help clearly and has a lot of applications in the transport world. I mean, the communications between vehicles, between the vehicles and the infrastructure, and the vehicles and the network. It's one of the main characteristics of this new technology, and we are working really on that. But if there are especially in Europe and Latin America, there are 5 requirements for 5G: and standard, network equipment, spectrum, use and business cases, and the proper regulation. I am afraid that we are in both regions very far away to having exactly what is needed to have the certainty, the legal and the business certainty to deploy this technology. There's a lot of work, and ladies and gentlemen, you can help a lot in making the regulatory and the business framework easier for the companies that are involved in developing this technology, which clearly will transform the way communications happen also in the transport sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Enrique. Let me throw it out for questions, either on clarification or any general questions you may have. I have a couple of my own, but let me give it to the floor first. All right. Excuse me, yes. Chile, please.
Thank you. I want to make some comments regarding this presentation, which is extremely important for different cases in Latin America. First is a call to change the model. Usually in Latin America, the networks have expanded through private concessions. And it is evident that the market alone will not cover connectivity in rural areas. In our case, we had concession models and allocated spectrum in dense areas, and it was mandatory to cover isolated areas as well. But that became a monopoly of a private company without the possibility of others offering the services. So we are changing, and we are making more active the role of the government in protecting these isolated areas and making mandatory to share the infrastructure that covers those areas. So I think there is an element here of the model change and the role of the fiscal or the private and public sector that is changing very much. And without that, we are not going to improve. In Chile, for example, we are leading in the region in telecommunications. However, we still have 200 areas or comunas that where less than 5% of the household have fixed internet connection. More than 80% of connections to internet are made by mobile phones. So we are not going to improve, for example, small business if we do not have that physical coverage. So if we want to improve the coverage, we need a spectrum, and we also need to change the model with the adjustment to the market. The market itself will not resolve the coverage of these areas.
Thank you to the Minister from Chile. Enrique, I don't know if you want to comment particularly on what we've just heard, but to the public-private dialogue, I have a question. I have a couple of questions. Firstly, how is Telefónica's conversation with policymakers going? And secondly, to what extent are you, as a company, focusing on the synergies between the three sectors we're talking about and realizing those synergies, really putting this stuff into practice?
Thank you very much for the questions. First of all, regarding the Telefonica conversations with public stakeholders, I would say that is rather intense, at the least. We have a very open conversation on basically the two topics that I wanted to cover in my presentation. One is how we introduce in the different countries in which we work the most advanced technology, because obviously there's a clear level of development in the different countries and welfare by having the most advanced technology that is on the market. But on the second issue, this needs to be done under a framework which promotes investment and clearly makes a sustainable business case for the different companies in which we work. You need to understand, and this was said some days ago, that we are similar to a lot to the companies that are making, the road or the automotive highways, but at the same time we are doing it and managing them by our own. So it clearly needs to show that it's a different model. And the second one is precisely as Madam Ministry from Chile said, we are working and having very intense conversation with governments about how to get the unconnected connected, because this lack of connection in the digital world, it's a new form of exclusion that we know is under our responsibility to amend, sometimes by ourselves, and that is why we are innovating with initiatives like Internet para Todos in Peru and trying to expand it all over Latin America, but other times with the help of the governments. There are many initiatives, for example, in Spain, like connecting schools or the broadband plan that the different governments have been putting in place for the last years, and they have had a really good result.
Okay, Enrique, thank you. In fact, one very quick final question from me. You referred several times to the right regulatory framework for investment, something that we've talked about a lot over the past few days. What are you referring to? Are you referring to public subsidies here?
No, not at all. Not at all. The telecommunications sector is a sector that, if one of its characteristics is they don't claim for public subsidies very much. The right regulatory framework for investment is one that, once we have achieved liberalization of the sector and there is enough competition there, there should be, a view in which price reduction by itself is not always the most healthy measure for the sector, but especially in a sector in which technologies are changing more or less every other 10 years, and that means a massive investment. So I would say that as a long-term objective, sustainability is the most advisable goal.
All right, Enrique, thank you very much indeed. At this point, I want to open it up to everyone here for questions specifically to the speakers. Yes, gentleman from Finland.
Thank you, Chairman. I would be interested in hearing more of a business cases emerging with 5G and fixed broadband, because it's expensive piece of infrastructure, and we know that autonomous vehicles will come, but it will take some time. So are there any business cases related to transport or others so that you can make it profitable investment in short term? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Enrique.
Thank you for the question. I mean, thinking in the short term, it's quite difficult. 5G has a very, very different use case at the beginning, and we need to translate it into business case. Clearly, one of the main characteristics is the number of devices that are going to be connected to the network and that the network accepts, and that clearly has a very important application related to transport. I am not that sure. We always say it will take some time to have all our roads covered, but not so long we will see a lot of the main roads covered and a lot of connectivity between vehicles and that infrastructure and the roads, and vehicles and the networks, let alone vehicles between them, which is also even more advanced, especially in the European Union. The other one, which is very clear, it's the industrial applications of 5G. One of them very important is the campus networks, which also has a lot to do with, for example, car manufacturers, very related to the transport sector, by which they will be able to digitalize in a way not seen until today their factories, and this will have a very, very significant impact in the cost and the way vehicles and cars are made.
Thank you, Enrique. Anyone else? Questions for either of our speakers? Yeah, gentleman here, Bank Mondial.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. On behalf of the World Bank, I want to go back to the first topic that made by Rachel on the decarbonization of transport, and want to make one really specific comment here, but also want to get Rachel's comment. which is an issue in many of our low-income countries about second-hand export of vehicles from OECD countries to low-income countries. This is a typical market failure because obviously you have demand from those countries. As those countries' income improve, urbanize, people want vehicles. These are including buses, trucks, and passenger vehicles. While in OECD countries, we have much improved our emission standards, so many of the vehicles become basically not meeting the standard after 7 or 8 years, but they still have very long economic life in low-income countries. But this vehicle, once they export to those low-income countries, becoming a major issue in terms of air pollution because the economic life could be extended another 10 years or even more. In addition, if without proper inspection, these vehicles are also a major problem on road safeties in low-income countries. So how do we manage that? If asked low-income countries to self-restrain, improving this is very difficult because the economics is not there. So I was just, since we have many of the ministers here from OECD countries, whether we can appeal to sort of policymakers in OECD countries and working with business and develop policies and regulation on self-restraint and self-censor in limiting those vehicles not meeting your emission standard, your safety standard, not allow them to export to low-income countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's an enormous potential problem. I mean, it's already an issue, and the size and scale of the problem could be one which undermines all of the progress that we can make because of technological advance. So it seems to me that there are 3 or 4 things that need to happen. First of all, organizations like yourself, World Bank Group and others, need to work with developing countries to make sure that they are procuring publicly and that they are encouraging into their own markets clean vehicles quickly. And that's going to require cooperation and hand-holding by organizations like yours. Secondly, for those of you investing and working hard to open up those developing country markets as export markets, you will be judged by what you do abroad as well as what you do at home. After all, the planet only has one carbon budget. And so through investment initiatives coming out of Europe, through the BRI and elsewhere, there is an opportunity for you to to lead by making sure that you are capturing the export market for appropriately affordable, low carbon or zero carbon vehicles, ships, planes, etc. now, which then involves a complicated policy conversation about what you do with the old stuff. And working with business around expediting the circular economy and looking at what's going into vehicles now and working out life cycle approaches to the transport sector. This is work we have to do. We either do it now and master it, or we don't do it and we will have a very different and much more expensive problem in the following decades. And so I think this is to go to the question you were asking, Axel, this is one of those areas for international cooperation, and certainly an area where OECD ministers can really take a leadership role. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Anyone else for questions? Final call for questions. Yes, lady from the AIB.
Thank you very much. My question is actually for Enrique. I think I was very intrigued by what you said about no internet coverage is also a new form of exclusion, and I think that I agree. I can even extend it to say that no internet or no digital education is also a modern form of illiteracy in the way going forward. So now you also mentioned that cheaper price is not a solution, because you have to invest heavily every 10 years, or might be even shorter than every 10 years. So now, to bridge these two, to bring the literacy of digital world up, and then you cannot offer a cheaper price. What would be a solution, or what could be a public-private kind of bridging of this two dimension? Thank you.
First of all, let me address the issue of affordability of connections, which is also a very important issue. You know, the indexes that we manage, not made by us, but for example, Facebook digital internet connections, says that at least in Latin America, affordability is not a very big issue. So the thing is, if there is a connection, there are tariffs economic enough for people to be able to connect. On that, I want to remind you that the telco industry, being, as you could say, a traditional industry, has put a lot of innovation when designing its tariffs. You don't see a lot of industries where they allow you to go to prepay your tariffs, to maybe only connect for one day. We have all kind of commercial proposals in order to make our tariffs affordable. That's the first thing. Second, the thing of skills, which I think it's absolutely important and crucial. We, as Telefónica, I was talking about a commercial activity of Telefónica. As we have the Telefónica Foundation has been working on helping infants all around Latin America for many, many years, for more than 20 years now. First with the initiative Pro Niño, who was aiming to take infants from workplaces back to school. Now that we have those children, many of them, because there has been a lot of development, and most of them now they are in school, we have to give them digital skills. And that's why we have our new initiative, which is Pro Futuro, not limited to Latin America, but also working in Africa and Asia. And there we are aiming two basic goals. One is to give the kids the hardware and connectivity they need to start their digital experience. But the second is to train the trainers, to teach the teachers, so that they can, not in once, but for the rest of their lives, teach their children in their schools in a digital way. So yes, we need to address all that. We are not the only ones working on that. Many governments are working on that, and we try to help them with the small contribution that we have. We're a big company in terms of the places in which we work, but worldwide, we're still a drop in the ocean.
All right, Enrique, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to move us swiftly on now, in the interest of time, to the planned interventions. Here's some of the national experience on this. We have planned interventions from a number of countries and a number of organizations, and I do, and forgive me for this, want to remind you again just to keep these between 2 and 3 minutes maximum, just in the interest of time. Let me start by giving the floor to the Minister from China.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Distinguished ministers, dear delegates, good morning. The theme of this year's RTF Summit is Transportation Connectivity for Regional Integration. This theme reflects the new value and mission of the current transportation and is also highly consistent with China's Belt and Road Initiative. China highly appreciates this theme. In April this year, China successfully hosted the second Belt and Road International Cooperation Summit Forum. In the opening speech, President Xi Jinping pointed out that the key to building the Belt and Road is connectivity. The Belt and Road Initiative has been proposed for nearly 6 years. China has adhering to the principle of consultation and cooperation for shared benefits and continuously strengthens the physical connectivity of the railways, highways, ports, waterways, airports, pipeline networks, and other infrastructure along the route. The 6 corridors, 6 connectivity route cooperation pattern has encompassed multiple countries and ports has basically taken shape. More than 14,000 trains operated by China-Europe Railway Express has reached 49 cities in 15 countries in Europe, and 1,239 new international flights are developed with the countries along the route. The new international land-sea trade corridor has achieved remarkable results. China has continuously strengthened the soft connectivity on transport policies, rules and standards with the countries. 18 road transport facilitation agreements, 39 maritime transport agreements, 62 air transport agreements, and 21 postal cooperation documents have been signed. Transport connectivity has effectively promoted the orderly flow and optimal allocation of regional resource elements. Distinguished ministers, dear delegates, the Belt and Road Initiative was launched by China, but the opportunities should be shared by the world. High-quality, sustainable, resilient, affordable, inclusive, and accessible infrastructure projects can help countries fully leverage their resource endowment, better integrate into the global supply, industrial, and value chains, and realize interconnected development. China will continue to make good use of the Belt Road Initiative Special Lending Scheme, the Silk Road Fund, and various special investment funds. With the cooperation of various parties, we will continue to promote the physical connectivity of land, maritime, aviation, and internet, as well as the soft connectivity of policy, code, and standard in order to facilitate regional integration of countries. Ministers and dear delegates, at the invitation of the United Nations, the Chinese government will host the second UN Global Sustainable Transport Conference in Beijing in May 2020. As the host of the conference, I sincerely invite the ministers and distinguished guests present here to come to China to attend the conference next year in Beijing. I look forward to meeting you in Beijing next year. Thank you.
I give the floor to Canada now.
Thank you, Mr. President, ministers and fellow delegates. I welcome the opportunity to speak briefly. First, I'd like to congratulate the Secretariat for an excellent work and strong results over the last year, and recognize the efforts of the Secretary General's incredible outreach around the world, which is a really important step in strengthening this really important multilateral institution. Canada appreciates the fact the Secretary General participated in the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation's 47th Transportation Working Group meeting in Canada last month. I'd like to take a minute to talk about an important issue to address as part of our broader objective of improving the transport connectivity, and that is women's participation in the transportation sector. Around the world, in almost every mode, women are underrepresented greatly in the transportation sector. The International Maritime Organization estimates that only 2% of the world's seafarers are women. And the Airline Pilots Association estimates that only 5% of commercial pilots are women. At the same time, Canada and many other countries are beginning to face significant labor shortages in the transportation sector. This is particularly felt acutely in the aviation sector. And in Canada, Transport Canada is working actively to facilitate the development of solutions to begin to address the problems that we're facing at home on this front. This is particularly acute for us in finding aviation services to connect small and remote communities in northern Canada. And to address this, we have to find more pilots. And the place to find more pilots is in the populations that are underrepresented. We held an aviation labor shortage forum last October that started the conversation of bringing stakeholders together on this front. We have launched a marine training program which is targeted to provide job opportunities for underrepresented groups. We are thrilled to see the International Maritime Organization create a theme of empowering women in the maritime community as part of its ongoing work on this issue. And for the past years, the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation has had a working group of Women in Transportation Task Force that's beginning to look at this issue. I would like to applaud Chile, whose ministerial representative is sitting here to my right, for the fact that they are using the opportunity of Chile hosting the APEC in 2019 to put a particular emphasis on increasing women's representation in non-traditional sectors. We are sitting here today in the ITF, colleagues, where the research program is currently under development. This is an opportunity to put a new emphasis on these issues and provide best practices and analysis to support all of our governments in addressing this issue. So Canada would propose that the International Transport Forum members leverage the significant research capacity of this institution to do several things. First, deliver a better understanding of the gender gap among ITF member countries. Explore and identify the common barriers affecting women participation in the sector, and work together to evaluate best practices and actions that countries could choose to adopt to address this issue. In the end, the full and equal participation of women and all underrepresented groups in the transportation sector achieves an important social outcome, but achieves a fundamentally important economic outcome that to which we are all striving. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues, for the opportunity to put this important issue on the record.
Thank you to the Minister from Canada. Can I give the floor to France, please?
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, ministers, internet connection empowers and enables those participating to have access to sectors, amongst them the transport sector, and we are facing an immense change in that sector. We have to try to adapt different networks to each other, communication networks, transport networks, physical networks, and we have to be coherent here. We have to align these sectors in a better manner, be it the public or the private sector, but of course all the more on the level of governments. There are several aspects that deserve consideration. The actual mobility will lead to a more electrified approach so as to enhance a fossil-free economy until 2050, according to the Paris Agreement. France has set itself the strategic goal to eliminate combustion engines until 2040. And we have set up an international scheme for decarbonization. We've did so already in 2018. That envisages to put 29% of electric vehicles on the market until 2030. That, of course, means that we have to invest into a charging structure, which is due for charging stations at home, but also in the public area. The automotive sector and the government have come to an agreement to develop a charging infrastructure together according to the regulations of the European Union. This is a medium-term goal that we have to define for the individual regions so as to effectively comply with the demand and give an answer to our users' behavior. apart from that physical kind of connection to an electrical infrastructure, in terms of charging stations, that is, we have to be in close contact to the users, to the citizens, so as to be able to offer a wide range of services, not only in France and French territory, but beyond. This is true for services such as common fees or easier payment methods, or reliable information on the availability of charging stations. Second point, autonomous driving until 2020. There also is a national French scheme. The president has reminded us of that strategy on behalf of the 100th anniversary of the French Association of the Automotive Industry. This, of course, entails certain codes of conduct, the confirmation of the letter, and economic possibilities of using these systems. We need communication networks, we need connectivity, we need smart intermodal cooperation on the basis of a shared economy and a strategy that allows us to focus on cooperating with the industry. The connectivity of vehicles, hence, is progressing, but it has to tap synergies when it comes to actually using connected vehicles. All this can only be rolled out with the help of pilot projects on a national and European level. The technology that we will use today and tomorrow for connectivity has not fully been defined. This is a bit of an unstable situation, and France has instigated a working group comprised of car makers, telecommunication companies, independent experts, government representatives. And in December 2018, the working group has already published new scenarios about complementing technologies, also involving G5. Thank you.
Very much indeed. Can I give the floor to the Russian Federation, please? Please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Secretary General. Thank you very much, Chairman, ministers, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Integration in transport cannot happen without digital technologies. Here on this forum, we have discussed the digital transformation at length, and this is why in my intervention I would like to focus on the development of the digital transformation in transport. Today, we talk about market developments, and by creating a common and homogeneous space for digital transport, we will introduce new technologies of autonomous vehicles. If we proceed on the basis of our common one-window scheme, we can take it that we will create a common digital space. And as logistics does not develop independently, but in a cross-border way, the countries, when it comes to digital technologies, should also develop shoulder to shoulder. What we have to do is we have to create a space of trust between nations. We should be open. We should open borders and offer opportunities for all those involved in logistics so that they get a chance to offer their services. We have to exchange ideas and experiences to that end and discuss how we can bring the digital transformation forward, certify it, and standardize it. The Russian Federation has recently passed a strategy on the digital transformation, and this policy states the key factors needed for the promotion of the social and socioeconomic development in our country. The Russian Federation also is currently implementing a project on digital transport and digital logistics. This policy also entails new solutions. Digital solutions are unique, and as such, they help to enhance the practical application and make their use more comfortable. New technologies are used, and they also help promote safety and security. Cooperation, of course, is also an essential and integral part of this strategy. What we want is the creation of a homogeneous common digital space based on common standards and regulations. The Russian Ministry of Transport stands behind the initiative instigated on behalf of the Russian industry, and as a result, an association was created that deals with digital transport and logistics. Already now, smart systems are being used that help to integrate control and tracking so that decisions can be made in real time. And here, information and data are used coming from satellite networks. One of our priorities is safety on our roads and to bring down the number of fatalities on the roads. This is something that has already been mentioned today. Within 2.5 years of the Araglana system, 3 million transport objects were identified that could send information on traffic accidents in real time, and this is a great way of using space technologies in transport. Beyond that, we, of course, focus on autonomous driving. The first autonomous vehicles made in Russia were tested last year on public roads, and today we continue working and developing these technologies. In Russia, the distances are usually very long, which is why developing the infrastructure is of particular importance. Our colleagues from communication have correctly stated today that 5G is of particular importance because it enables us to exchange data. These technologies will become an integral part and will be applied in the transport sector. Thank you very much.
Very much indeed, Minister. I'm going to hand it to Spain now. A quick reminder, though, a gentle reminder to everyone to try and keep these as tight as possible. We've got about 25 minutes if we're going to get to lunch on time. So to Spain, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to raise a comment about the role of the transport administration in this revolution that we are living in the sector. We need to provide answers to the new challenges that are on the table. And transport, it's been said before, but I'd like to highlight that transport can no longer be seen as an isolated sector. It's essential a new paradigm. It's essential to work together with other sectors, of course energy, of course telecommunications, housing, and other important sectors that are all connected. And moreover, all those challenges have a global dimension. A deeper cooperation is needed between the administrations. All mobility policies need to be aligned to achieve common goals. We can no longer work alone, work as isolated. No organization has all the answers. We need to build a broader vision to incorporate all the aspects in a new comprehensive long-term strategy. In the Ministry of Public Works, Transport and Housing of Spain, we are already working to lead this shift of paradigm. We think we cannot talk about transport or public works anymore. We need to talk about mobility. Our ministry has to reinvent its role and to develop a new role. As a facilitator, providing tools and information so that other stakeholders with different know-hows and experience can develop new answers and solutions, and try to find new equilibriums, providing regulatory certainty, but avoiding regulatory barriers to innovation, enabling innovation, but guaranteeing safety and security, and taking the most of the disruptive innovations, but guaranteeing the fair transition and protection of users and workers' rights. With these objectives in mind, we are working in a new national strategy for safe, secure, sustainable and connected mobility. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. And to the Minister from Poland now, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for giving me the floor, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to share with you some information on the development of the transport network in Poland. I think it's a great forum to do that, because Poland has observed recently a great pace of economic growth. We've been observing great development of transport infrastructure, roads, airports, which was made possible thanks to EU funds, but also to big national capital outlays. So I'm very happy to be here with us, and I can discuss a flagship transport program in Poland for integration of regions by new transport connections. I mean here central transport port. The Poles are not afraid of being involved in great ideas, especially those that would serve connecting peoples and not dividing them. The central transport port called Solidarity, that Solidarność, is not only to leverage economic development of Poland, but it's also to serve all. That's why we hope for great support of our foreign partners and financial institutions. I must now mention the organization of IATA, which has been supporting us in that. The central transport port would be the biggest airport in Central and Eastern Europe, and the throughput would be 45 million passengers annually, and as an ultimate goal, 100 million passengers. On the other hand, it would be a railway hub connected with a network of highways. So thanks to that investment, Poland will meet the need of increasing aviation between Poland and connecting. So investment looks like another airport, but it will change the landscape in this part of Europe and will enable more flights between our part of Europe and the rest of the world. And it is to serve the economy, and that should be the motto of the flagship transportation program. Thank you very much.
To the Minister from Poland. Can I give the floor to Georgia, please?
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here and take part in this opening ministerial session on improving global connectivity, transport, energy and telecommunication network. Fast economic growth and the improvement of quality of life is hard to achieve without good internal and regional connectivity. As the title of the session indicated, connectivity cannot be confined only to transport. It also encompasses digital and energy network. Moreover, while talking about future connectivity, we also need to think about synergies between these sectors of connectivity to maximize their benefit. For instance, use of digital technologies to ensure better traffic and supply chain management and improve customs clearance procedures. Infrastructure development is obviously high on our agenda. Georgia has been investing billions of euros in its transport infrastructure, modernizing and developing its seaports, airports, highways, railways. As of today, we need to spend at least 3.4 billion US dollars implementing of its major projects. As for digital network, one of the biggest challenges for the government of Georgia is strengthening transit function of the country through the existing and new high-capacity fiber optic backbones link Georgia to the neighboring countries, as well as to the European and Asian countries. On the other hand, the government of Georgia actively explores the potential to host a regional digital hub and attract investment in the development of data centers, which could serve as a regional hub for South Caucasus and gateway to Europe and Asia. Energy is another priority sector for Georgia. Regional cooperation and embracing technologically balanced dimensions, not only in the country but in the region, is of high importance for ensuring secured supply of energy resources. Such cooperation offers room for favorable power exchange among the countries of the South Caucasus. Furthermore, Georgia has the opportunity to be able to connect directly with European Union, European power system of the Western Black Sea, either it will be Romania or Bulgaria, via the underwater cable. When implementing the project will contribute to energy security of the EU and Caucasus region, supporting development of the renewable energy sector, increasing the transit opportunities, back-to-back trade options between EU and South Caucasus region. It has to be mentioned that there are a number of successful transit projects on stream in the region. We already host PTC, South Caucasus Pipeline, and WREP projects intended for the delivery of Caspian Sea reaches westwards. Thus, Georgia has been a reliable transit partner country for many years and has an intention to enforce its position and become a regional hub in future by strengthening its transport, digital, and energy network. I wish you the best of luck and success in your future endeavor to improve global connectivity. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Right, we have two governments left to hear from and then several international organizations. Can I hand the floor now to Turkey?
Teşekkür ediyorum Sayın Başkan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, distinguished ministers, distinguished delegates. As we all know, today an effective national and international transportation infrastructure is considered to be a main element for globalization and economic growth. On the other hand, we understand that economic and social sustainability relies on not merely national policies, but regional and global ones. Within the scope, connectivity of transport infrastructure and its interaction with all other sectors closely related with the transport industry is indispensable for establishing a sustainable and integrated transport network. Given this fact, the main objective of our investments is not only to ensure multimodal connectivity domestically, but also to establish seamless, uninterrupted and quality transport infrastructures with the corridor notion. With her location connecting continents to each other, Turkey is on important trade routes between the emerging economies in Asia and Europe and Africa. Therefore, our country is strategically important for development of regional and interregional connectivity. Being fully aware of this very strategic importance, we attach great importance to any endeavor regarding transport connectivity. On the other hand, transport connectivity covers not only the connection and harmony among modalities, but also the relationship of transport with relevant sectors such as energy and telecom. Similarly, the transformation in technology and production leads to radical changes in all sectors, and necessitates strengthening the ties between transport and other sectors. Particularly with digitalization, we give importance a lot to smart transportation and telecom infrastructure projects. We have defined one of our main transport policies as dissemination of smart transportation systems that are compatible with one another, respond to the needs, cover the state-of-the-art innovations, and take into account all other modes of transport and relevant interfaces, and we have established the required legal framework for it. With so many relevant subsystems such as traffic management systems, electronic payment systems, driver support systems, and passenger info systems, smart transport systems have become an important industry in Turkey with a great potential to create added value. We support transport services with vehicles and software that communicate and act together in traffic on the roads where much of traffic happens. We use information and communication technologies in order to render quality and comfortable transportation services to our people by cooperating and coordinating with local administrations regarding urban traffic. Furthermore, we know that we need to take into account not only economic, but also environmental and social factors when developing the infrastructures that ensure connectivity, and we consider it very important to make our investments sustainable. In this context, we deem it very important to shift from the oil-dependent road transportation to other modes, to secure energy supply, and to minimize the environmental impact. Under the UN Sustainable Development Goals, goal number 7, affordable and clean energy, we have closed the regional gaps in terms of seamless access to energy in our country and have secured the energy supply on a large scale by diversifying the resources in our country. In this vein, there is a significant increase in electricity generation out of renewable resources. We started the transformation in this field in Turkey with the adoption of the Energy Efficiency Act in 2007. Thanks to the strategy papers and action plans that followed, we have made a substantial progress in increasing energy efficiency and reducing greenhouse gas emissions in construction, manufacturing, transport, and energy sectors. Distinguished participants, to conclude my remarks, I would like to express that we give our full support to inter-regional and global cooperation and partnerships in the realm of transport for development and welfare, and that we attach great importance to ITF in this context. I congratulate South Korea for their successful presidency, and I wish success for Ireland as the upcoming president. Thank you.
Can I please give the floor now to the gentleman from Tunisia?
Merci beaucoup.
Ladies and gentlemen, Secretary General, ministers, guests, the topic of international connectivity is absolutely integral for economic development in Tunisia and is closely linked to the quality and efficiency of infrastructure, be it in the air or on the seas or on the ground. New technologies and innovations will redevelop our transport systems, and this is the content of our policies on transport, connectivity and logistics in cross-border regions and within Tunisia as well. The safest and most environment-friendly kind of transport is rail, and this is why we focus on it in our policy for mass transport. We have a rail the length of 260,000 kilometers, poorly electrified, and currently it is narrowed down to the banlieue connections, that is, connections between the capital and the surrounding areas. Here, we have implemented a policy to improve the electrification of our railroad connections, and in doing so, we will, of course, link up our capitals in a better way, helping the economy and helping to bring travel times down. Electrification, of course, is also a chance for Tunisia, a country that still relies heavily on fossil sources, and we want to improve the current use of electrification as well. The Tunisian government has set itself a goal for transport. 35% of the energy consumption in transport will be reduced on the basis of technological developments and electrification. We have presented a bill that contains incentives for electric vehicles, and currently we are reviewing the legal framework that we can create for electromobility. Another important tender is worth mentioning, with 1,000 megawatts of renewable energies, which accounts for approximately 25% of national energy consumption. This is another project that helps to bring the energy of tomorrow forward. Ladies and gentlemen, energies and technologies, communication, whenever we mention that, we believe that these are economic success factors. There is a strategic development plan of a digital nature for 2025, and we want to make sure that Tunisia can rely on a technological infrastructure that allows us to reach our goals. When it comes to the different transport modes, for aviation, I would like to say that here our strategy is based on international connections. We want to enhance safety on our Tunisian airports, offer an improved infrastructure that is adapted to the development in aviation, and another strategic goal is the development of a network that connects Europe and Africa. These are the most important connections for Tunisia. A part of that is the liberalization of our aviation network together with the European Union, European Sky, that is. The negotiations were concluded in December 2017, but so far, new agreements concerning the implementation have not been passed and implemented. For maritime transport and ports, I have to mention that Tunisia holds a strategic position as it is a Mediterranean country, and of course we have planned significant investments in that respect. Currently, maritime transport can benefit from regular connections by global shipping companies, and we're part of Euronet, where we have launched a pilot project for 2 sea routes between Rhodes and Marseille in France and Rhodes and Italy. This is part of that new concept. Then, I would like to mention another important Tunisian project, which is a project that we will start to roll out in the beginning of next year. It is about loading and unloading containers, and we will implement it until 2023 with our ports. For our Tunisian ports, there is another plan because approximately 70% of trade goes via these ports. Here we want to simplify border processes with paperless processes on terminals. We want to introduce a smart gate, and hopefully we will manage to do so until July. As you may know, these processes usually need acceptance by the people involved, especially in ports. We see that there is a bit of resistance whenever we try to roll out new projects. And then there is another scheme focusing on the development of the Mediterranean economy. This is also funded by the European Union. I would like to keep this brief and focus on our saying that our targets are ambitious, and we have a strategy to bring connectivity forward based on the development of our infrastructure according to international standards. We will use renewable energies as well as new technologies and smart systems that allow us to integrate our country into the worldwide logistics chain to the best possible manner. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, we'll finish up now with the international organizations. Again, I do urge you to try and keep these comments as brief as possible. We have about 10 minutes before we have to do the photograph. UNECE to start, please.
Excellencies, UNECE would like to thank ITF for providing this summit platform to discuss transport connectivity for regional integration. UNECE highly values the importance of transport connectivity in bringing economic and social prosperity in the globalized world. We started our support for enhancing transport connectivity early 1950s through coordination of transport infrastructure networks and common regulatory frameworks to facilitate safe, efficient, and environmentally sound cross-border movements by road, railway, inland waterway, and intermodal transport. 59 conventions on inland transport greatly helped economic development and integration in the UNECE region. The conventions meet a full range of need for inter-country transport connectivity, such as e-road, e-railway, traffic rules, signs, signals, transit TIR, temporary importation of vehicles, contract CMR, insurance, green card, vehicle manufacturing, containers, perishable foodstuff, dangerous goods, and harmonization of frontier controls. The success of the conventions in the UNECE region has encouraged countries in other regions to accede. 149 UN member countries around the world have acceded to at least one of the 59 conventions. In February 2019, UNECE Inland Transport Committee adopted its strategy until 2030, deciding to help efficiently address global and regional needs in inland transport and continue to provide comprehensive regulatory framework for inland transport, comparable to other specialized agencies of UN. Taking the benefits of ICT, UNECE has adopted e-CMR and finalization of e-tier in the cooperation with partners and contracting parties. UNECE World Forum for Harmonization of Vehicle Regulations, WP29, as the UN platform to regulate safety, emissions, and efficiency of vehicles, has started to formulate technical regulations on autonomous vehicles. UNECE and ITU jointly organize annual events on connected vehicles to share knowledge and experience in this new frontier. Transport connectivity is an unfinished agenda. There are still numerous challenges ahead. In developing sustainable transport connectivity, it is important to continue all levels of dialogues on transport connectivity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. To UN ESCAP, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The demand needs for transport in Asia Pacific is exceeding in a rate that is quite unimaginable. We are seeing that Asia Pacific will have more middle class than ever before, and they will buy more cars than all the other regions combined. We are seeing this in freight transport as well. Freight transport in Asia is likely to account for 2/3 of global freight transport. And so on, we see the greatest growth happening in aviation. We believe that the solution, as was mentioned by the World Bank on used car issues, is regional cooperation, but even more in the context of the global climate change challenge, it is cooperation interregionally, especially between Europe and Asia. Discussion on having a Europe-Asian committee to discuss transport innovations, transport connectivity is on the agenda of ESCAP, and we continue to pursue this further. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. And BSEC.
Mr. Chairman, you mean BSEC, the Black Sea Economic Cooperation. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank for the invitation. It gives us the opportunity to present our case. And of course, I would like to thank also ITF and especially Secretary General Kim for the cooperation we are establishing between our two organizations. The Black Sea Economic Cooperation is a regional organization promoting the economic cooperation among its member states and beyond. So that means that connectivity is of great importance to us. You already heard from some ministers of our 12 member states how important the regional cooperation is in what concerns connectivity and transports, and not only the regional cooperation, but also global cooperation, as you mentioned, sir. So today even more, because in our area, which is, let me say, the bridge between Asia, Europe, and Africa, there is new dynamism in what concerns the, let me say, establishment or the construction of new transport infrastructure, connectivity infrastructure. Just think about the Belt and Road Initiative of China. So our organization did a lot until now, during its 27 years of existence. It certainly can do and will do better. After all, the biggest room of all is the room for improvement. But allow me to close, Mr. Chairman, with something that struck me, that Mrs. Rachel Kite had the courage to say before so many ministers today. She spoke about insipid political leadership. And it provoked the thought to me that indeed the changes and solutions for tomorrow or even for today are so disruptive, and we heard a brief description of them, that perhaps could make what Mrs. Kite named an insipid political leadership perhaps more hesitant. So I believe that eventually the education, the training on these changes to come is perhaps as important, if not more important, than the changes themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, to the Civil Aviation Organization. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for giving us an opportunity to ICAO to make an intervention to this ministerial session. Our organization is in charge of that international civil aviation, so our name is ICAO. The issue here is the term connectivity, which is very fancy word, but very fuzzy and very ambiguous, without any single definition. If we try to define air connectivity as a sort of an ability to move people and goods with minimum price and with maximum user satisfaction, then the key is affordability and accessibility. This is the key. This is our understanding. In fact, air travel price has been reduced around 60% for last 50 years. Also, as of now, approximately 50% of the world population can have access to an international airport within 100 kilometers radius. According to our ICAO forecast, passenger traffic will double in next 18 years. And also, carried e-commerce carried by air will reach around 96% until 2025. Air is so critical. In order to further enhance air connectivity, what we have to do, there are so many challenges. Due to the time restriction, I just wanted to highlight only two things. The first challenge is there still remains a significant barrier to market access. Our air transport regulatory system is already senior citizen. This was developed in the middle of 1940s. So now, ICAO, this year, ICAO is the 75th anniversary. So our bilateral, so-called that our regulatory system is already 75 years old. And then, unfortunately, there is no single progress at the multilateral level to liberalize market access in exchange of market access. No single inch progress for last 75 years, even though there is a big progress at the bilateral or regional level. This is the first challenge. The second challenge is in tandem with the growing use of the innovation, such as drones, unmanned aircraft, or blockchain, and also sharing economies of land transport. We need to innovate ourselves. We need to innovate our own regulatory process. This is very critical. In this regard, we tend to be fascinated, over-fascinated by the power of disruptive technology itself. However, equally important is to accurately estimate the demand for these disruptive technology and to estimate the cost incurred to use these disruptive technologies. Based on these estimates, we need to ensure seamless connection or integration of air connectivity and urban connectivity, particularly with last mile transportation, by making smart investment in infrastructure, because our resources are limited, so we need to be very smart. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. And thank you to everyone, ministers, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, for all of your remarks today, the interventions, as well as the questions. We're going to be, well, I will be presiding over the family photo in just a moment. Just a quick announcement ahead of that. All recipients of the invitation to this photo, if you could stay in the room. Those who are not participating in the photograph, after the final comments, if you could move immediately to the lunchtime sessions. Food will be provided in those sessions. They've been delayed, the sessions, to accommodate this little delay. We're about 20 minutes over. So let me hand the floor back now to the Vice Minister from Korea. Thank you.
So thank you for your patience for a very long time. So we have made very productive discussion, and after listening to your comments and questions, ITF Secretariat theme, connectivity, is very timely and significant. So all the participants here have made very great comments, and we have discussed a number of impending challenges of our international community. And I'm very glad that we have very intensive discussion on all these different issues. So I would like to give my thanks to speakers as well as all the ministers and representatives who made their comments. So personally, about all these international, it's a great opportunity for me to learn a lot of different types of international issues. And it is my great honor to be part of this forum. And I would like to give my thanks again for giving me this opportunity. And to all the ministers here,
I would like to give my deep thanks to your support and congratulations and high appreciation for our successful presidency. And including ITF Secretariat, all the members concerned have given us great support, and thank you again. So all these issues that we discussed together and the comments made by ministers and speakers will be greatly helpful when you go back to your country to set up the policies. So transport connectivity, telecommunication, and all the other different sectors connectivity cannot be done without international cooperation and coordination. With this ITF platform, we expect that we could continue to have steady and consistent international cooperation. So I would like to give my deep thanks again to all of the members here. And also, I would like to give my special thanks to Secretary General IMO and European Commissioner and all the representatives from international organizations and all the other distinguished guests coming here out of your busy schedule. And before concluding my remarks, my congratulations go to Tunisia representative who became an official member of ITF. So this is the end of the open ministerial meeting. Thank you very much.